Be sure to hop on over to the Spiritual Broadcast Network. It's the go-to place for all things spiritual. You'll discover internet television shows that you won't find anywhere else. You can also choose from hundreds of hours of spiritual documentaries and movies. You'll enjoy on-demand and live internet television programming 24/7. Best of all, we add new dramas, comedies, talk, and reality shows and more on a daily basis. So why spend countless hours searching the web when you can quickly find just what you want on the Spiritual Broadcast Network?
Good afternoon. My name's Ed King, and I'm going to have a little chat this afternoon. I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. Usually I have some kind of a general topic in mind. I'm going to talk a little potpourri stuff this afternoon. One of the things that I encounter, I do a lot of reading, and I may be reading several books at the same time. Right now I'm reading a novel. I'm also reading Richard Dawkins, one of his books. I'm also reading some interviews that Bill Moyer did years ago on television. And it amazes me that things change in time, but they don't change. And another thing that I may try to explore a little bit today is people being so absolutely sure of themselves. Folks, I got to tell you something. I am not that sure of myself. I think there's probably a few basic truths that we have to adhere to in life, but gosh, there's so many things that other people have a different opinion about than I do, and I don't agree with them. But that doesn't make them right and me wrong, or vice versa. One of the things that I've been picking up in some of this stuff that I'm reading is, this idea of today's youth is going to hell in a handbasket. This, of course, goes all the way back to the Greeks. And whether things are worse or better now, I don't know. One of the things I was reading, and the person was exploring the fact that our wars today are much more destructive, and we're killing a lot of civilians. Now, who started this kind of thing? I think it really started in Spain in 1937 when the revolution was there, where there were massive killings, although it probably goes back to World War I at least, because there was some bombing of cities then, I think. But I wasn't aware, I wasn't alive then, so I don't know really. So most of what I have to go by is my own experience in life. One of the things that's amazing is that we are so technologically advanced today, and we keep doing this by leaps and bounds. I've said this before in other programs. It seems to me life was a lot simpler. So in time, I think I've also said this one before. It's one of my favorite stories. Is I got my first brand new car in 1956, and it had the buttons to push up the windows, and it had a top that went up and down by itself, and all this sort of thing. And I was proudly showing it to my father, and he said, "That's just one more damn thing to go wrong." And he's right, because as a young child, my father drove Model T Fords, and you had 3 pedals, and that was it. But you did have to crank the thing sometimes, and sometimes you'd have to back it up a hill because the reverse was apparently stronger than the forward gears. But this idea of being absolute, people are so strong in their views, and they all are proselyting you, whether it's in religion or politics or whatever it is. And one side remark I will make here, I get these emails, and my wife has some friends that are more than right-wing, they're radicals, I would call them, and they keep sending these scurrilous emails. I never get any of this stuff from the left, and I know a lot of people who, their thinking is on the left, or what we would call on the left. I don't know what left's right. I would personally consider myself a fiscal conservative, because I don't believe in spending a lot of money on unnecessary wars and stuff like that. Could be better spent here and education, a lot of other things. See, here I am. I'm preaching an opinion to you, but this is just my thoughts, and you're welcome to your own. I go to a meeting once a week, a group of people that I know, and we have different political philosophies and religious philosophies, and we never get up in arms and ready to get into a fist fight about anything. We just josh each other about these things. One of the things, I went to a funeral this morning. The lady died. She was 58 years old. I know her father, and that's why I happened to go to the funeral. This, of course, brought back some nasty memories because come this Thanksgiving, 4 years ago this Thanksgiving, my son Mark, who was 58 years old, the same age as this lady was when she died, died of cancer also, as she did. So it was kind of a saddening event for me. I talked a little bit to his father after the service, after everybody else had gone up and done their condolences, and I went up later and talked to him and I told him, I said, Bill, it's the worst blow we're ever going to feel in our life, I think. I have experienced the loss of other loved ones, like family members and a wife, and it's difficult. But losing a child is probably the most difficult, and it doesn't go away because I'm talking about it today because there it is. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't sit around and feel sorry for myself about it, but it's part of life. And it goes back to living life on life's terms. Now back to what I was talking about is changing mores in society. I was born way back in 1922, so I remember a good deal. I have a pretty good childhood memory. And I remember a lot of stuff that went on in the so-called roaring 20s. The girls' skirts inched up over their knees. My goodness, what a thing. One of the more hilarious things that used to happen in those days, these girls wanted what they called bloomers, and they had an elastic waistband. And every so often, the damn elastic waistband would break, and their bloomers would fall to the ground. Now, I'm not talking about anything very deep here, am I? But back to changing mores. We have a different time in right now because we're so technologically advanced. For example, you don't have to know the multiplication table anymore. You don't have to know that 3 times 3 is 9, or 8 times 8 is 64, or 9 times 9 is 81. You don't have to know all that stuff because you have a computer or a little gadget to do the arithmetic for you. And I've gotten kind of lazy. I don't know why I'm keeping my encyclopedia, but because I used to look stuff up. Now I just go punch it in the internet and get the answer, which of course is usually from the original Britannica. But going back to changing mores. I think it was in one of Bill Moyer was interviewing Tom Wolfe, the author, the guy that wrote Bonfire of the Vanities, and which incidentally was a great book, and they made probably the world's most horrible movie out of it. It was a disaster. And I had never watched it, and I just watched it. Somebody got a hold of the tape at that time and watched it, and I said, oh my God, I see why everybody panned this movie. It was horrible. And a good director, great cast, but there it was. But he was interviewing, Moyer was interviewing him, and he was talking about, now you got to remember this interview probably happened 20, 25 years ago, at least. And so he's talking about the things that were going on, the changes that were going on then. Well, they're so out of date that we don't even think about them. And I can't recall exactly what he was talking about, but the fact that it's different mores today than it used to be. I think he was talking a great deal about marriage and divorce. I don't recall exactly because as I say, I read a number of things and they kind of cross-reference, and I don't know whether some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today or I'm talking today came out of Dawkins' book, Richard Dawkins' book, who is an atheist, and I think the title of the book is the God mythology or something like that. And I read these books because I try to keep an open mind. I don't want to close my mind and say, okay, this person's wrong because they're an atheist, or this person's wrong because they're an agnostic. I think agnosticism is probably the sanest path to follow, because admitting that we don't know everything, and I've talked about this before, more than once, I'm sure, on this program, that my conception of God is entirely different than these people that I encounter, say, at a church. I've gone to church a few times lately, and I, quite frankly, I just think their God is too small. I'm off the subject, but back to mores. As I said earlier, the ancient Greeks lamented the fact that, and I forget which writing, whether it's Plato or where it was, that they're lamenting the fact that the youths were not up to the standard that they should be. And we do this and do that. And I remember when I was in high school, sex was a big taboo, mostly. Good girls didn't do it, and you usually could find somebody that did, but it was different. Now today, people don't even bother to get married. Now, I'm not criticizing them. That's their choice. I personally am the type of person that makes a commitment and tries to stay with it, and come good and bad weather, and that sometimes happens. If we compare the youth of the 20s to the youth of the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, we get a different thing that we're talking about today. I don't think I really, again here, I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to really be talking about what I'm talking about, because this is something I found out, that the longer I live, the more I have to learn, and the more I realize how little bit of knowledge I have. They say you only use about 15% of your brain, I guess. Well, I haven't figured out the way to use any more of it than that, I guess, because I still don't, I'm not consider myself a deep thinker. Maybe I am compared to some other people, but I don't know. I thought I thought I had more to say about on that subject, but I just this is not one of my better days, I got to admit. And going through the funeral this morning was upsetting. I haven't been feeling too well, and here I am whining and crying about it. But that's the way it is. I have to realize that my feelings are real, and they're just feelings, and sometimes I can't really do much about them. I want to talk a little bit more, maybe, about the 1920s. It was a strange time in a way. Things were different. Kids used to think that if you, maybe this is a little later, but they used to think if you took 2 aspirins and drank a Coca-Cola, you'd get a high from it. Of course, that's nonsense, but kids, and another game they used to play is one guy would stand behind another kid, and the kid would, in the front, would put his fingers on the 2 carotid arteries and shut off the blood flow to the brain. And of course, the kid would faint and go backwards. I never let him do that to me because I didn't want that feeling. We are so highly entertained today. Our television has several hundred channels, I guess. I never explored all of them. My goodness, they go on forever. But they're mostly filled with commercials. I always get a kick out of it. If you try to watch a movie that is on regular television with commercials, the commercials keep getting longer and the story keeps getting shorter, and the interviews sit back and forth, and they elongate them. But they already got you hooked with the early reels. But be that as may, I don't know. I don't want to go back to particularly a simpler life, because the Great Depression of the 1930s was not a fun time. It was a time when people were out of work. Like 30% of the people were out of work, and we had make do projects like the WPA and the 3 Cs that did things, productive things. They used to make jokes about the WPA, but they did a lot of things. They built a new high school ball field in our town, and I'm sure I've talked about this before, but because it's often on my mind that it was a terrible time when people were so much loved it when they got a job, just a job. Being employed was a big thing, and there was so much unemployment that there was a lot of leisure time for people to sit around and talk, and as kids used to listen to them. It was interesting that they never used foul language in those days. I guess that's a kind of a change in the mores. The use of the F word today is just, and I'm guilty of using it too. It's the way you have to emphasize things, I guess. But back to the Great Depression. As I say, it was today. What I encounter is people that are not working because they can't get a job that is the kind of job they want. Now, as I say, back in those days, you took a guy would take any job that was available. And this, I guess what brought this to mind, and I had this fleeting thought, and it went, oh, I know. One of the other interviews that Bill Moyer was doing was with a philosopher. I think he's, at that time, was head of the philosophy department at Yale or Harvard, I think Harvard. And he was talking about the fact that well, right now, it's these college graduates cannot get a job, and they make a kid about, well, you better learn to say, will that be fries with it? But today, the people that are graduating from college, what I gathered from this interview and from, no, this was something else I saw on television. Oh, it was during one of the debates at Hofstra, and these guys were one of the guys. He wanted to know what these two presidential candidates were going to do about getting him a job, the type of job that he should be entitled to if he graduated from college. Well, I didn't know that if you graduated from college you were guaranteed a super white-collar job with a good starting salary. I didn't know that. I don't think it's true, and I think the expectations is so great. Today, I can remember when we have a date and nobody had a car, and we take our date in a streetcar, maybe go downtown to a movie, and then go somewhere and get a bite to eat afterwards, or usually a milkshake or something like that. And today kids go to a prom and they got a limousine and they got this and they got that, and they spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Boy, there are some changes. People, we spend madly on stuff we don't need. What kid needs to go in a limousine? As I say, at prom time or dance time, when you have some kind of a dance at school, maybe you'd carpool with somebody. Maybe some guy would get his dad's car for the night, and there'd be a bunch of us crammed in one car. But today's expectations of what the good life is, I think, is not the good life. It's not giving back to society what we need to give back to them. It's just expecting too much. No matter what you think of Jack Kennedy, that one great line he's remembered by is, ask not what you can get from your country, but what your country can do for you, or what you can do for your country. And I think this is true in anything. If everybody, instead of sitting around and whining about stuff, would go out and do something, even volunteer work or something. I have an acquaintance, and he somehow or other has, as he says, retired at age 48. He's 60 now, and his idea of a good day is that he can go play golf or bridge, and that's the high points of his day. Well, I can't imagine living a sybaritic life like that. I am constrained from doing a lot of things physically and otherwise because of my physical condition, because of my advanced age, and I just cannot imagine that playing a game of golf is. And you know what Mark Twain said about golf? He said it would spoil a good walk. Well, they don't even walk anymore. They haul them around in cars because they get them through the course faster. I know that today is Rambling Rose Day, but this is just the way I am. I'm in a goofy mood. I'm feeling a lot better than when I started talking. I have to say that. This is always an uplifting experience for me. I don't know if it does for anything else, but it sure does a lot for me. And I'm going to leave this studio in a much happier mood than I came in it. I can guarantee you that. I've got 8 more minutes, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I've talked about everything under the sun, and probably some of it didn't. It was disjointed and didn't come together. But here again, times change. I saw there's an old guy that has a program on television. I just happened to get a little piece of his today, I guess it was, looking for a football channel, I guess I was looking. And he was talking about the fact, one of the things that spurred me to say about the technological advances. He said the kids don't learn to even write anymore, but they can text damn good, but they don't have to learn math because they've got a gadget to do it with, and everything is kind of is this good or bad? I don't know. I really don't know. I enjoy the fact that my car is air conditioned. My car's older than a lot of people, but it is air conditioned, and I enjoy that. Other than I remember the first time I came to Florida and I put the top down in my car. That was that 1956 Chevy I was telling you about, and this was in 1956, I guess, or 57. I don't remember. No, 56. And put the top down here, and I almost roasted. And of course, I had no air conditioning in that car. That was kind of unheard of in those days. When I was, a lot of things we have in cars today. You don't think of a starter. You used to have to crank the automobiles. We have things that heaters. Cars. If you bought a car in 1940. You had to pay extra if you wanted a heater in it, and you had to pay extra if you wanted a radio in it. And neither of these two things were too good in those days, but you had to pay extra for everything that you put on the car. Power steering and power brakes were unheard of. Although I do say this, one of the cars that I had in my youth was a 1936 Chrysler Airflow. Whatever possessed me to buy that hunk of junk, I don't know, but something did. And it did have power brakes. The only problem was, if the engine stalled out, there was no power in the brakes. You'd put both feet on that pedal and try to stop the thing. So we have, I enjoy a lot of the technological advances, and they make my life a lot more comfortable. The first time I had total air conditioning in a house was the last house I owned up north, which had total air conditioning in it, yet in the summers when I just remember when the summers would come along and you had two problems. You had several problems. You had flies, mosquitoes, and sweat. You just go to bed and everything. You had fans, and that was it. I remember when we first got a television. When I was a telephone when I was a kid. It was a thing that you cranked, and it had two batteries to power it. And you cranked it, and you told the operator, the local operator, who you wanted or what their number was, and it would be some simple number. And we were on a party line, and you had to learn. I think our ring was 2, and it went all the way up to 6. And you had to count the rings, and if it was 2 rings, it was for you, and if there's 3 rings, there's somebody else, and so forth. So and then a dial phone even today is out of date. What is that? And of course the computer in every home is a fantastic thing. It has good parts and it has bad parts. And I want to briefly, I've got a few minutes, I want to briefly go back to this thing. I do not like people being so positive about their opinions. I am not positive about my opinions. I try to keep an open mind. Now, I don't always. I have to confess I don't always keep an open mind. I've got certain areas where I'm just as hidebound as these other people. But that's because I'm right. Isn't that awful? That's the way people are, though. They think they're right, and they'll stand by, despite all logic. They will spout nonsense, and you're supposed to believe it. Because they believe it. My wife and I have been married for 37 years, and we seldom get into disagreement because she is a fundamental Christian, believes every word in the Bible is true, and there was something else that came up, I forget what, that was equally as distasteful the other day, and we got into it a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. And I had to bring out how about when Joshua fit the battle against Jericho and the walls come tumbling down? I said, you mean to tell me that God told them to kill those people and steal their land just like we did from the Indians? Oh, yeah, because if God told them to do it, it was all right. Well, I think one of the 10 Commandments says, thou shalt not kill. Of course, see, that came a little later, didn't it? I think they come a little later in the Bible, but not. But you could get into some violent arguments about the validity of the Bible. There's some good stuff in the Bible. Geez, I love the Ecclesiastics and the Proverbs, and not all of them, but most of them. And well, here I am, and I think I've got 2 minutes, but I think I've stumbled, rumbled, and rambled so much today that this is probably going to be the worst program I've ever done here, unfortunately. But, you see, I got some stuff off my chest, and that's what's important, too. As I said, I always leave this room feeling better than I walked into it, and that's a great thing. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope I get to talk to you again next week. Bye now.
Be sure to hop on over to the Spiritual Broadcast Network. It's the go-to place for all things spiritual. You'll discover internet television shows that you won't find anywhere else. You can also choose from hundreds of hours of spiritual documentaries and movies. You'll enjoy on-demand and live internet television programming 24/7. Best of all, we add new dramas, comedies, talk, and reality shows and more on a daily basis. So why spend countless hours searching the web when you can quickly find just what you want on the Spiritual Broadcast Network?